No.
Okay.
And Andy, we got a special guest today.
Ooh, where? Huh?
My favorite man in the world.
A man who, now I wonder if Warrior fans even remember him.
Oh,
no.
No.
There's a lot of
Who's on the
18-year-old
team?
Warriors fans. There's a lot of
who's on the team right now, by the way? Before we even get into it, guys, and you intro me, I feel bad. I think I'm not pouring over this on a granular level like you guys are. I mean, is Otto Porter? He's not still on the team, right? Like he's
relax.
Is David Lee? Is David Lee still? Is he still?
It's a good thing he's not.
Ornian Kuzmic, is he still around in the background somewhere?
Kuzmic, what a pull!
There's just I miss the days of them having the awkward, gangly center who will never break the rotation. I mean, they had one for half the year, but anyway,
they're about to play one in the first round. They're about to play one on Friday.
Ooh, Sabonis a little better than that, my man.
Come on, too far.
All right, we got Ethan Strauss from the House of Strauss. Ethan, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Love being on. You guys. I don't want to, the sincerity's got to be in the outro. I got to be busting your balls at the beginning. But I am happy to be on with fine gentlemen such as yourself.
Do you consider yourself still NBA media? Where do we define ourselves in the House of Strauss sphere?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'm not the only team I watch is really the Warriors, and it's because they're on. It's on in Seinfeld when they were pitching that TV show. People ask, why would you watch? And it's because it's on TV. When I go to the gym, the games are on, and they're still pretty enjoyable. They're still pretty. I mean, this season has been kind of rocky, but there have been some mystery to it. I like how it seems like maybe Voltron is reassembling. I never watched whatever show or movie that happened in. It's just a phrase I hear people use. I think that's cool. GP2, I enjoy that. But I am not by no means an expert, but every now and again, given what I did and having been a beat writer, I'm called upon to fake it. And I had this whole rigmarole 2 days ago, and Sam knows about it. I told him about it because every now and again, Colin Cowherd will call upon me to be on his show and give some Warriors perspective. And I feel a little bit like I can't say no to Colin, but at the same time, I feel like I'm a bit of a fraud. And so there's always a crash course.
You've come to the right place.
Yeah. Well, and so it happened in an especially weird way. I, through a scheduling mistake that was my fault, I dropped my kid off at soccer camp, and then I get pinged by the producer, and I realize I think there's too much traffic to get back home and set up. And I was on the freeway.
In-car hit?
Well, I floated it to the producer, but you can't do the in-car hit. Okay. And so I just got off 80. I was about to say the 80, like a Southern Californian, like a San Diegan. I got off 80 and I just went on Solano because I know there's a bunch of cafes. I marched into the Royal Grounds Cafe and I just announced, like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to do a TV hit. Is that okay? And
wow. Now I have to look this one up because you told me about it, but I still haven't watched it.
Yeah,
I've been to that Royal Grounds, by the way.
Oh yeah, well, it's got some nice open lighting. I'm telling the short version. I actually checked out 2 cafes really quick, and I went, and the clock is ticking, by the way. And I'm getting buzz. The producer is buzzing me, like bring. I'm like, I can't, not good enough lighting. That's not gonna work. Ooh, Royal Grounds. Okay, open concept. I like this. This is good. And I try to set up by the coffee station, but a guy's literally trying to get coffee and elbowing me out of the way. I go across facing the sugar cream station, balance the phone on a wall mount piece of artwork, squat. I'm squatting the entire time to be in the shot as old people are looking at me confused. And then in my head, I go, oh, and I have to be passable about the Warriors. And he might ask me about the CBA. Let's see how this goes. But the reason I'm telling you this story, other than to give myself a pat on the back for being resourceful and getting it done, is that when I was done, the cafe owner wasn't annoyed. He was just so stoked because obviously he's a big Warriors fan. He went, "Is your job to talk about the Warriors? Oh my God. This is so cool." And it gave me this thought of this team in this area. It still has such a positive association that I was so lucky to even in this weird adjacent, sometimes confounding it, sometimes annoying people. But whatever it was just so nice to be attached to something in a way that makes people in this area just get excited in a way where if I was in that guy's cafe bellowing about the Dow Jones Industrial Average or some other thing, I don't think he would have liked it. I don't think he would have abided it. But because it's the Warriors, people are like, hell yeah, make a scene. Let's do it.
That was a hell of a plane land right there. That was like one of your Substack articles. Just let's go, and just
I also think you're underselling it because you covered the team for what, almost a decade there,
something like that, yeah.
And you covered basically all the key figures who are still running the team, so you have a certain level of knowledge of.
Like, do you still talk? Like, you still talk to Bob? Like Bob let you know he's not coming back yet. Like,
is Steve in the group chat?
Yeah.
I'll shoot a text every now and again, but I don't try to bother them. This isn't giving too much away. Steve Kerr butt dialed me. I don't know who he was trying to call, and then he shot me a text. He's like, you should come to practice sometime. I'm like, okay, and it was funny because I was with my neighbor, and he's a really cool guy. He's a personal trainer. And this is when this happens. Like, dude, can you get me into practice? Can you come to practice? Oh my God. And it's this reminder again that people love this stuff. For me, it was just, go back to work, go back to the old office. Like, I don't know. I mean,
I gotta talk to Kevin.
I mean, that is kind of, you are right though. Like, this team resonates in a way that very few do with the local area. And like the general sentiment I get from Warrior fans is, well, Wiggins is back, so they're obviously going to repeat. Ignore the fact that they're 2 games above 500 or whatever it may be. Yeah. There's just like, at a certain point when you have that much success and really there's just no one else who looks all that impressive. Like, you don't see the next Warriors. You see a bunch of teams that are like, they're good, but they're beatable.
It feels like this isn't a championship team, but nobody else is. Exactly. And it's a relative game. I mean, is it saying too much to say that in the Western Conference last season, there was no championship level team other than the Warriors in the end, as it all played out? I can't remember who got injured and everything else. That might have confounded things. And, you can look to the East and find worthy championship teams, but it seems like in the Western Conference right now, it's truly in variance, unless Denver actually shows that they are what they present as like, regular season wise and shuts everybody up.
It feels like the Suns are being built up as that team. And like, I get it on paper. They do have players who can be key players on a title team, but they've played 6 games together. Like it's more of like a fantasy team than like a reality at this point.
Yes. Yeah. I should have mentioned them, but the reason was that they just kind of, it's the most mercenary situation since the Brooklyn Nets, which birthed this situation. Although there's a little bit more organic than the Nets. That's not fair. There is something of a core happening there with the Suns. Yeah, it wouldn't shock people if they won a championship, but then again, I'm not sure what anybody would really draw off of it. Because
you think people wouldn't?
I think it'd be terrible for the NBA if they won a title, just because like they get KD midseason. He doesn't play because of a variety of injuries, which are just kind of bad luck, and then they can just roll through the playoffs with no chemistry, no team identity, none of that. Like, I don't know. Andy and I have talked about this, but like if the Warriors aren't going to win, I would want to see a team like Denver or Milwaukee or Boston, someone who like has been through the wars and their core's been there. And like, at least you know what you're getting with Denver. Like, they're a team who's built themselves.
I would even argue the Lakers would be a team that, I mean, as much as I would hate watching the Lakers win and LeBron win, it just be, I know, but it would just be objectively, like, that would be a story where it would make a lot of sense. Like, you could sell that. But the Phoenix Suns, I mean, like, even to a lesser degree, we talk about the Clippers all season. The Clippers, what is that? What is that thing over there? I watched them play last night, and I'm like watching Bones Highland make big shots in the biggest game of the season. I'm just like, what kind of team is this?
A player they fired like 6 weeks ago.
What
and
is this?
Same with Westbrook. It's like a transient concept of a team. It's not a real, and it starts with Kawhi, and it's just, it kind of gets back
a way to
people...
milk. Well, I was about to say it was a way to milk Steve Ballmer, but that sounds not right to say a sentence. But a running joke within the league is just how many people he's hired who have convinced him with his deep pockets to fund them, who it's too many cooks in the kitchen. And I don't think the results have been that impressive overall.
And now
given
they're
the
getting
bounty
Bob
they had.
Myers.
Oh, maybe. We shall see. We shall see. That's what Bob does when he turns on the waterworks. It's just he imagines coming back to work for Joe, and that's when he really starts, tapping into the character there. I'm kidding. Those are genuine tears every time Bob is crying at a press conference. He's a good guy. He is an agent, though. He is an agent. You got to remember that.
And I think actually, as we talk about like the Clippers and Suns, like that's why the Warriors resonate so much with their fans, right? Like Steph Curry can do literally no wrong in the eyes of anyone in the Bay Area and Warrior fans. And it's just like they've had this same cast of a team for a decade plus that they've seen grow together. That's what gets fans to actually engage and kind of stick with it instead of whatever the hell the Clippers are, That's
what people want. You can either argue against what people want or just accept it.
That's what the internet's for.
Yeah, I suppose that is what the internet's for, and increasingly the media. But it seemed like when the Heatles thing happened, which I think in the short term was good for the league, because it was good to have one situation like that people shook their fists at and got mad at. And then you could juxtapose that against some other situation that was a little bit more organic. But excuse me. Once it became a trend, that's not really what people are into. And it's difficult because the players collectively bargain for free agency. You need to allow for free agency. You want a situation like KG with the Wolves after over however long of trying to go, okay, this isn't working. We need to find something else. But when it tilts over to this other mode where every half a star is demanding that the situation change, that's not good for the league. I mean, I wrote that it's one of the reasons why women's college basketball is gaining on the NBA is that some of these stars have been with the teams for years, and it gives you time to get used to their presence. And again, I think people start making this moral argument when you point it out that players shouldn't be forced to play for the team that drafted them. And yeah, sure. But number one, that's what the money's for. And number two, hey, this is just what fans like. This is just what they're into. They want a core. They love that they know who's on the Warriors as their core. And then you can make some additions to the core, and that keeps it fresh. If you go away from that model that we remember from, the not so distant past, you get into this kind of topsy-turvy, the Rubik's Cube is always spinning, whatever stupid metaphor I'm trying to find here, but it doesn't work as much.
I think that's why it's important that like teams like that actually win, because it paints like, I don't want to go off too much on KD, but it's like, if you're a young player, whose career looks more enjoyable, Steph Curry's or Kevin Durant's at this stage, you can think he's the most talented player of all time. He might be the most talented player of all time. But when you look at it, just kind of bouncing around, no real fans, he wins, but people don't give him the credit for it, versus the guy who built something, the incentive would align that doing it the way that, Curry and the Warriors did is more enjoyable. You get more fruits of your labor than trying to, kind of do what essentially LeBron did, right, for years.
Yeah. Not enough people have been making this case that in many ways it's better for you. I guess because it sounds so staid and it sounds like an abstinence education speech, but you're more oftentimes as a superstar better off staying put. And there might be a ceiling on what you can accomplish, but you don't want to, like Paul George is a man without a country. Kevin Durant is a man without a country. LeBron James, Cleveland, I think, will always be appreciative of him coming back and winning it. But there's still that kind of feeling where it's been diluted a little bit, as it should be, by the way.
He might just be one of one where he can quasi pull it off in a way that isn't really repeatable anyway.
I would agree. I think that in a way he was the exception. that proved the rule and the imitators trying to do what he did. I mean, I always had this thought of watching, because, I was the lone person watching The Shop when it was on HBO, and he had Anthony Davis with LeBron, and Anthony Davis was saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, that LeBron really taught me how to view myself as a corporation because I'm a business, and he taught me how to view myself as a business. And I thought, LeBron can view himself as a business, and that can work for the league. 25 guys viewing themselves as a business, I don't think that works for the league. I don't think Anthony Davis viewing himself as a business is great for the NBA. And it got taken there, and it's not something that really resonates. And it didn't really come up in my big argument with Nick Wright over Michael Jordan versus LeBron, but Michael Jordan doing it largely with one team, and then after he was at his peak being on the Wizards as this weird little epilogue. But for the most part, he's a Bull. The 14 original Jordan sneakers, 14 Chicago Bulls seasons, it matters more. It should matter more. It should matter more than I played this out and I've handpicked my next situation that has the talent I want to allow me to win a championship somewhere else. It just should.
I guess the question is, though, do you think it matters more right now? I think you could objectively say that, but what about 20 years from now, right? Because 20 years from now, you look at KD's, and I agree with you, but you look at KD's statements. He's like, well, this is kind of about the CBA was kind of like, hey, this is good for the league, right? This is good that these moves are being made. We want to normalize this stuff, and part of me feels like that they feel that 20 years from now, this stuff is just going to be what people are going to be used to. You and I may still feel the same way, but what about your kid? Right? What about actually both of you have kids? So all of those kids, right, they might feel like that's the norm. Will that be different?
These guys might be the reason that our kids don't watch sports because that's the increasing trend is that only 15% of Generation Alpha in surveys, which is the current teenage generation, and Sports Business Journal wrote about this, only 15% in surveys say they enjoy watching sports. That's 85% who just say, nope, no, thank you. Not really into it. Enjoy doing other stuff. So I don't know what's going to be remembered 20 years from now. I actually think this has become a massive cope of LeBron James fans, where they keep talking about how, in the future, and I've seen some Twitter influencers making this argument of who are these 20-year-old LeBron James fans? I mean, who are these 20-year-old Michael Jordan fans who argue he's better than LeBron? Maybe they're people who just understand basketball and basketball history, and they're able to contextualize what the past was. That's number one. And number two, it's just a matter of fact at this point that the current generation, when you do ask them these questions, and Chris Broussard brought this up in his argument with Nick Wright, and he actually cited the data, young people now say Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James. So I think 20 years from now, that's just something that people are going to think, because that's something people think now, including the generation that only has LeBron to watch to go on.
Also, I resent that LeBron fan argument because I never watched Babe Ruth play baseball, but as a child, I was told he was the greatest player of all time. It's just, I'm going off of like a black and white photo. That's it.
Yeah, we have object permanence. We're able to look at a situation and go, yes, I watched X player during this amount of time, but I don't think that just because I saw this player, that obviously he meant more to the sport than a player from the past. I mean, we have the ability to look back and have that kind of understanding and go, Barry Bonds was better than I don't know who you want to mention right now. I mean, steroids, everything, I'm making the argument like in the other direction. I'm going like, I understand that Barry Bonds was better than Mike Trout. And no amount of trying
to put the metrics in front of me and convince me that, actually he's just as good. It's like, no, I know what I saw. I know it's a fact.
The argument, well, we could do it very subjective now. I think we're getting far afield, but hey, getting smoked by Ohtani right there. That was Trout's moment. That was Trout's moment to validate the nerds, and he failed right there. That's my take.
Yeah, he had no shot. That you're already a 3 out of 10 shot at hitting, and then you're facing one of the best pitchers. And
I love your Ohtani love. You're right though, man. He should be on the Giants. I mean, it was a mistake. That was a Manfred mistake.
You're saying commissioner level.
Yeah, you got to throw your body in front of that. Like, where's your power? Where's your soft power? You're gonna let the Angels get this guy? Like,
well, the problem is next season he'll be on the Dodgers. And is, I mean, that maybe objectively is a good thing for the league, but I mean,
I would say so.
Yeah, so that's kind of, they'll figure it out. I mean, the Giants didn't have the DH. Maybe the Giants would have had a shot, but it's the Giants.
Yeah, but if the DH existed who's to say he wouldn't have ended up on the Dodgers at the beginning?
Facts.
Exactly. Something we'll see. He's ridiculous, and that World Baseball Classic gets to our point. Like, that was probably the most compelling baseball I've seen in a long, long time. Because you got to see best versus best, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we rarely get to see that in basketball. Like, we saw Steph against.
You don't love the All-Star. You don't love the All-Star game.
Oh my God, what was that? Like a week of discourse about how bad it was.
That's how bad it was. It's incredible. It really brings out all the Kobe clips. And I mean, those were some compelling clips of Kobe saying that this is what the fans pay to see. They want to see the best players go against each other head up. And so you should try this radical concept that Kobe Bryant espoused. And yeah, it's just not. Does feel like it's on offer.
Does feel like something. You see SGA's quote about money during that interview, and you're just kind of. I'm not gonna say the players hate the fans, but I do feel like it's something where they're kind of looking at the fans and saying like we don't really give a shit about you guys as much as some of the guys. They don't feel the need to even play the game. I think
I kind of go the other way. I don't blame SGA. I blame the people in charge, because he's, by all accounts, a good kid, but this is how he sees it, because there's nobody communicating that it should be any other kind of way. All the communication from on high is that you don't have responsibilities to your job beyond whatever is on the exact dotted line. And sometimes even then, I mean, I made this point on a few podcasts, but it remains amazing to me that Ben Simmons didn't show up to work and the NBA had shit to say about it. It's like, it's a difficult situation when, we hear this. Obviously, we would like players to play, but it's just, why do you make the Sixers be the bad guy in that situation and suspend him? I mean, I know the NBA had the Sixers backing to do that, and that's why the Sixers, found it fit to fine him and do what they did. But this is a situation where nobody from on high is really sending the message that, hey, these are your responsibilities. This is what you have to do, and it matters. So it makes sense to me that a young guy like SGA is going to go, well, if I'm not paid money to do this specifically, then I'm not going to try, because nobody's really sending the message to me that this is the biggest night of the NBA regular season and it's worth a tremendous amount of money to the league partners and it's good to try. Nobody's telling him that. So he's responding in kind.
Yeah, someone needs to be the bad guy, basically, is what you're saying. Someone needs to be David Stern being like, I'm going to say the unpopular thing and you're going to hate me for it, but everyone's going to benefit from it.
I mean, the Ja Morant stuff is another case. I know the article just came out today about him, and that's. Good Lord. You talk about Ben Simmons, but nobody gives a shit about Ben Simmons. Ja Morant is. That is the next dude. That is the. We talked about this. But Ja Morant is fun to watch. Casual fans that don't know anything about basketball, don't give a shit to watch every night, look at Ja Morant and go, that dude is going to be the most exciting player in the NBA, if not already, outside of the usual.
By the way. I'm sorry to interject, but I loved. Okay, so I loved it because you were referencing something I said, and as a narcissist, I was into it.
I got you.
But I was making the point that one of the reasons everybody walks on eggshells and treads carefully on the Morant situation is that he's worth so much potentially to the league, because he's the only Gen Z superstar with massive marketing potential because he's an American and everything else. And it was funny to see the NBA Twitter kind of, do we say intelligentsia? People who, they're great observers of basketball because they're so into it, but it's totally ruined their perspective. And they started yelling at you about the other potential superstars that the league could have from that generational cohort. It's just like, no, this is the only guy. There's no other option. What, Devin Booker? No, I'm sorry. Your mom's never going to know who Devin Booker is. It's never going to happen. Never, 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 ever. Unless she's a Phoenix resident, is she going to know who Devin Booker is? Ja Morant has a shot at that because he's just got that thing. He's just got that thing. He's got the Nike signature shoe deal. He's got the ad campaign. A whole lot of eggs are in that basket. And if it doesn't work out, it's just a really bad thing for Nike, and it's a bad thing for the NBA. And it ironically creates the conditions that you're talking about where nobody seems to be telling that guy what he needs to hear. So because they're so dependent on him, they're almost, at least from my outsider's perspective, raising the odds that it becomes a bad outcome and the end of a neat true Hollywood story. God, I'm old to make that reference.
And then the weird part about that article today, and maybe you can shed light on this because you actually worked in this space, but word of Morant's behavior spread quickly through parts of the sports media. Some journalists would later say publicly, and basically implying people knew about this but didn't report on it for an extended period of time. And yeah. I guess it would seem to me, as someone who's never worked in that space, if I had something like that, that would be something that potentially could be huge for me as a professional to report, right? Like, forget journalistic obligation. How about me as someone hoping to advance my career?
Yeah, no, definitely. And there's something interesting where the social incentives outweigh some of the financial incentives. And I think that a lot more than people will admit, they're just scared to go over the middle. They're just scared to get that blowback. They're scared to become the main character on Twitter.
Twitter is prime Mike Singletary, just ready to lay you out if you run a crossing route.
Yeah. You know, a little Ray Lewis, whatever we want to update this with. Or how about they just don't want to get yelled at by an NBA superstar in a press conference? Because I know a little bit like what that's like. But from Kevin Durant's perspective, I remember he was complaining to people and he was saying, like, doesn't he get it that this is a good situation and he can just rise with us? That's what he said about how.
Like, why would you want to just be PR?
Yeah, exactly. Because from his perspective, having played, where he played, there's a sense that, well, I'm amazing. This situation's good. We're going to win the championship. I mean, I hate it, but it's good for him. I want to get out of here, but it's good for these guys. So why don't they just kind of ride with it, spin it off into being a national reporter, as happens? And that makes a certain amount of sense. But I think that in NBA media, a lot of the times people will rationalize to themselves why they can't do a story because they need to get the bigger story or they need to break the news later on. And I think it's often a cope. I'm not thinking of anybody specific when I say it, but I think it's often a cope.
I'm not trying to get
for not wanting. Well, it's fine if I get in trouble. I just don't want to. I don't want it to seem like I'm impugning somebody specific. I'm sure I've done something like this before, right? I did it probably on the Wiggins story, Sam, which that was one where I have other options to write about and think about. And that was one where some of my readers wanted me to talk about that, but for a variety of reasons, I didn't. And I think you can rationalize yourself out of talking about something that's pertinent, that would be good for you career-wise, just because you don't want to deal with all the bullshit.
I would like to hear, to segue this over, you already did it, but I would like to hear what you would have done if you were still a beat reporter or national reporter the last 6 weeks in the Wiggins saga. What would you have done?
Handheld camcorder outside the Wiggins residence in Minnesota, ambush interview, like one of those old school Michael Moore documentaries. Clearly, that would have been the play.
Andrew and me. That would be the documentary.
Andrew and me. It's a very good question, because I sometimes did do some of that stuff of everybody's talking about it, but nobody will share it.
Yes,
I definitely do that on my, I definitely do that on my Substack. That is a theme of everybody's thinking it. Okay. I guess I'll say it. This one was a little bit weird for a variety of reasons. One of them is the feeling that even though the fans care now, they're going to turn on you. they're going to turn on Sam they were all on Sam's side. But if the Warriors go on a run and Wiggins plays great and they win the championship, they'll be right there pointing. The same people who wanted Sam to give them answers and were saying, yeah, they'll turn on him and they'll say, what were you doing? Questioning this beautiful man. He was in pain. How dare you? How dare you? I think I would approach the story maybe more from the agency perspective, because I legitimately don't want to get into whatever personal issue Wiggins had, but I also don't want to be lied to. And I think that's fair. And it might not be the highest stakes situation in the world, but there's something bizarre about a guy being gone 2 months, not getting an explanation of it beyond that it's personal details. People are seeing whatever they're seeing on Instagram, fill in that kind of void. And then the explanation is dad, illness, with no specificity. And there's this willingness for everybody, or at least a lot of people, to jump on that and go, yeah, well, obviously. It's like, okay, well, I don't understand then if that's happening, why it would be hidden. That doesn't make sense. Let's be real here. This is Andrew Wiggins. This is not Steph Curry. This is not somebody that TMZ would line up outside the family house or the hospital and bother your family member. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then furthermore, they've got this big press conference, 13 minutes, Bob Myers sitting next to Wiggins. And the thing that I would say about Wiggins in his favor, he's a very honest guy. I don't know much about him as a person other than that, actually. But it was very clear to me, because of the whole vaccine controversy, that he was very straight up, and in the face of what was a lot of media pressure back then, admitted what his preference was, what his decision was. And then after winning the championship, when the same media members and people in the Bay Area wanted to embrace him again, and he was asked about it, didn't say, I was happy about having had to do it, even though that's what they would have wanted. He didn't give it to them. So there's clearly something in that guy where he doesn't want to lie. And so it was very interesting to see that 13-minute press conference, and he brings up his father 0 times. So, and when he's asked about it, says doesn't want to talk about it, never mentions the father, which, I mean, Sam, can we be honest that we were hearing like a month before that his agency wanted to really push this as the explanation? So, you know, all's well that ends well. I don't think a lot of fans really care what's going on in his life or want to pry like that. It was more a situation that didn't make a lot of sense on the face of it. And it was unprecedented. And it's the type of thing that can only happen in Adam Silver's NBA, to be honest. I mean, you might favor that. I know a lot of people, at least performatively, favor a situation where guys leave for months because of family issues, but that's not something that ever would have happened under Stern. And so it made sense that fans had questions. And I don't like when people start indicting the fans and criticizing the fans for that. I don't like that.
That was the part where I had an issue with. Like, to this day, I've not played with, like, you know, retweeting or sharing rumors I've heard. I really don't care to. Like, that's just too TMZ gossipy for me. It's everyone has a personal life. Things go on. But when you're getting into a key player not playing and not knowing if he will come back, and honestly, we still don't know if he'll be able to play up to the level he's capable of playing because of the layoff, and it affects their chances to win. It's a basketball question. It's a basketball question to wonder if this situation will affect their ability to win a title. I mean, I could make the case right now. If he was there, they're probably the 4 or the 3 seed by this point, because they're 3 games away from it, and he's easily one of their 3 or 4 best players. So
again, and it's just, you can only take so much bullshit, and Bob Myers is doing what he's supposed to do. They have managed to land this plane. They've managed to reconcile the situation. He's back for the playoff run. And so he is basically saying the message in that press conference of, this is what matters. This is what matters even more than that. It's just like, okay, but you're saying that because he's back. I mean, come on, let's cut the shit. Like, we all know what we're here to do.
They also wouldn't have.
This isn't a sitcom about life lessons, you know? Like, what are we doing? Like, what is this about?
I don't know why he didn't quote Buddha or something. I mean, it would have been great, like a Kendall. That's a session on my mind.
Palinka.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the Palinka move. Bring a book up there and read something. You know,
I'm frustrated now to get past kind of what happened. I'm frustrated by the way that media has talked about the Warriors and how quote unquote great they are at bringing Wiggins back to the fold. And I'm just like, dude, like, stop. Like, number one, they only did this because what if he had choked? And then what if he had played like Klay Thompson did, who wasn't, by the way, rewatched Game 6 last night. Klay was awful. What if Andrew Wiggins wasn't amazing in the NBA Finals and they end up losing? Like, do they do this? Do they cut him some slack?
Or if he's Ty Jerome.
Yeah.
Or if he's Ty Jerome.
Yeah. Or Anthony Lamb.
That's the thing. That's the annoying thing. It's like everybody pretends that it's not about basketball, but it's about basketball. His leverage to what Andy is saying is about basketball. If he was worse, then they would probably put more pressure on him, ironically. If they needed him less, they would put less pressure on him. And again, I think this is all the power vacuum because the Warriors shouldn't be in the position to do this. This should be a league thing to be able to have these standards and guardrails. Right, if it was David Stern, I mean, I was like,
if I'm the Warriors, I would have played it exactly the way they did because they basically got to protect one of their key players who they know is not the type to respond well to a certain level of scrutiny about his personal life. And they got to bring him back into the fray with a really soft landing, which bodes well for him being able to play up to his capabilities quicker than, let's just say, if this turned into, like, just imagine if this was the NFL. The noise, all this stuff, he wouldn't be able to.
It would never happen.
Of course, it would never happen. But like you get the noise. I mean, it would. He's not going to hear about it at all. He'll play his first game, and the post game will be, well, he's rusty because he hasn't played in a while. And it's like, well, yes, of course he's rusty. He hasn't played in a while. As I say this, watch him hit 6 threes in his first game.
I mean, who knows? Maybe the rest is beneficial. I'm not sure. I was thinking about, like, if it was, again, my main point, because I don't see it made enough, is that this is the league's role to say, here are our standards. This is the CBA. This is what you need you doing. Obviously, if somebody dies or if there's the birth of a child, you go there and then you come back. But this is what you get paid over $30 million to do. I mean, if it was Stern, I'm just like, you can't even imagine. It would be, I don't know, like, well, we hear what your agency is saying of what the reason is, Andrew. Do you think we don't have Instagram? Do you think we don't? No, I don't know what he would say. Anyway.
I'm trying to imagine, actually, David Stern with the amount of social media. I see what your friends are posting. I just like, it would.
Yeah. We see what your friends are posting. We wouldn't want it to be a bigger issue in the media.
And so, by the way, did you take Bob Myers' comments as like a veiled shot at the media? Where he
not from how we saw it. It was very Kevin Durant, you can rise with us, sort of sense. Sometimes I don't think they even see it the same way as you might see it. But can you kind of give because I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it. Can you tell? I'm running your podcast now. Can you tell the audience?
He thanked the media for their discretion in not pursuing the personal details and respecting his privacy. As we live in this era where everyone wants clicks and there's no privacy, and just kind of, it was at minimum a very strong, like, let's disarm everyone and make them feel good. I'm gonna make you feel like a good person agent move.
It was like FDR's press secretary saying, thanks to all of you for not showing a photo of the wheelchair. That's that's very good that we did that. I wouldn't feel great about that if I was in that press conference. I would feel like I probably should have done something different than what happened.
Like your job to report on.
Well, yeah, I would have. But it's tough. I mean, sometimes there are different tiers of what when you're doing that kind of job. It's this funny thing, and it's like they've got such an exquisite sense of what everybody knows, what the media knows, but everybody doesn't know. What maybe one-on-one they're cool with, you knowing, but no other media member can know it. And then the final level is you shouldn't know that. Something went wrong that you know that. And that was always fun when I got to level, when I got that, because you could almost see the look of shock or the look of panic when that happens. But I think they did a good job of preventing anybody from really getting to level one in a very, and when I say level one, I'm not talking about what's going on with him. I'm more talking about what's going on organizationally, because everybody in the organization wasn't cool with what was happening, but they did a good job of staying, united and not letting anybody,
or
as far
just
as I know, get to
coaches
level
who are
one.
nervous because it really hurts their ability to win games. Like just as a brass tacks. Like, I mean, you probably know the coaching staff as well as anyone, at least the mainstays. Like, those guys are very competitive. They think in very binary terms, correct?
Oh, and they worry about things. They were very worried in 2019 that Kevin Durant was not going to show up and really bring his full self. And that was a whole drama that played out in all kinds of different ways, with him getting hurt and then coming back and getting hurt again. But before all of that, there was this fear, because I think in a few of those games against the Clippers, he kind of detached. And then he scored a bajillion points, I think, in the clinching game for them against the Clippers, and looked incredible. But yeah, I mean, I remember being around that situation.
Oh, the top blocking comment. Oh yeah, I couldn't get a shot off because Patrick Beverley is top blocking. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. And then he was just amazing. I mean, yeah, they're always worrying, they're always grousing. Coaches, as a rule, hate their players, which is always funny. I mean, they know overall that the players matter and that the players, they're grateful for great players, but they also hate their players because they're so dependent on their players, and the players are always doing something other than what they told them to do. So if you ever get a coach honest off record, all they're doing is just grousing and bitching about what their very best players are doing at the moment. So yeah, they would be flipping out about it, and I don't think they would be as sensitive. I mean, that's the other thing with the NBA. It's so Hollywood. I mean, it's amazing to see the dichotomy between how the speeches are projected outwardly, as opposed to when you're on the ground level talking to these guys in the locker room, and they don't even talk the same language. It's just a different, it's just a different thing. It's just, you hear a very sensitive coach out there talking to everybody touchy-feely, and then you're talking to him in the locker room and he's talking about the other player, and he's like, that guy's a pussy and you got to cut his fucking throat. And like, that's it's just a different, there's a lot of Hollywood, there's a lot of pretending, and I think it's
look, man, we're parents. We understand it.
Yeah.
There's certain things you can't say in front of the children.
Yeah. Well, that's how they regard the fans. That's how they regard the fans.
I mean, I don't know if I want. Do you want Steve Kerr on the podium saying that? Actually,
it would be fun.
It would be really fun. I personally would like it, but I could see how
Steve's
that's not the best move for him.
We're not calling Steve a liar, but like, Steve's a different guy. He's a competitive, fiery guy.
You mean Scottish Steve?
Scottish Steve. I like it.
That's I don't know. I get
Race Science brought to you by Sam Esfandiari.
That's Fitz's go-to move when he's describing like how Steve Kerr gets really angry. Oh, he's gonna give him a dose of Scottish Steve in the locker room.
Oh my God.
Some of his things are just amazing in the corniness.
It's incredible coinage. Like all the good. I miss Big Jim. I want Big Jim back. And I want the nickname back.
What were your thoughts on the Wiseman stuff?
I found him fascinating. I've never seen a player able to produce so well in the box score while utterly crushing his team that it was almost a magic trick. And it's to the point where you can't totally write him off in a way, because there have been these guys where they're plus minus disasters, and then later on they actually marry the statistical production to the winning. I would bet against it in this case. But I just found that fascinating. It was almost like, by watching him and watching Looney, you could learn so much about basketball just by watching those two guys. And specifically, you could learn so much about basketball that isn't captured in a box score in opposite directions. And so I found the saga fascinating. And I actually did find myself less interested in the season after the trade, because I did enjoy those minutes. I did enjoy the roller coaster, even though it was really bad for the.
There was no
it was
up
bad
on
for
that
the
roller
Warriors.
coaster. It was just down. The roller coaster was.
But there
just
was
down.
this thing of like, oh, a little jump hook. Oh, look at that right there. Oh, maybe is he getting it? He might be. Oh no, he doesn't get it. But maybe no, he doesn't. He's never gonna get it. Oh, but wait, Lou
runs into Clay's man. Oh no, not happening.
Yeah,
I mean, like Kuminga does the same stuff, but at least Kuminga does a lot more good stuff. So it's just young guy stuff, right? So I'd bet against it too. I don't watch Pistons game anymore. I watched like the first 5 games that he played in Detroit, and I was like, all right, well, it's the same dude, so I'm not going to waste my time watching.
Watched a few minutes of it last night because it seemed like it was getting interesting. He's still the same guy.
Yeah, it's the same dude. I mean, he's going to be for the next year or so until at some point he figures it out. Like maybe he doesn't get the contract that he wants, or maybe there's no extension, right? Maybe they don't pick up the option or something like that, where he's like, okay, like I'm gonna have to actually figure out how to play basketball.
Yeah, I was gonna say he seems to me like the kind of guy who needs to feel the negative to actually want to change, because basically they benched him because they're like, look, man, we're trying to win games and you can't even set a screen properly. And then he just was able to sulk his way into a trade that lets him do whatever he wants on the court again,
Yeah.
So it's got to hit that situation where it's like, no, you're on a veteran minimum or like a 10-day until you commit to doing things that teams actually value in terms of winning. Honestly, isn't that what happened with JaVale in some ways?
Literally just
it did.
That type of
That's the best comp. That's the best comp for him is JaVale, which isn't what you want with the second pick. But that draft is such a disaster, and it was in such trying circumstances that it makes sense that it was a disaster with COVID hitting right then, that I don't blame the team for the pick. I know there was a lot in the aftermath. Like LaMelo talent-wise would have been the best pick, but that hasn't even really
LaMelo's
worked out tremendously.
Man. Yeah,
so it's just we're getting. I mean, look, if you wanted to have the balls to pick Tyrese Halliburton,
it's the only one
way ahead of where the other teams picked him, then I mean that would have been a great pick. But even in the case of him, he's on a team that didn't draft him, so it's just one of the biggest draft disasters of any year so far.
We're watching Patrick Williams in it last night against the Bucks.
Oh, Patrick Williams.
Geez, I'm sure nerds like this guy, but man,
he's another one of those. The idea of him is better than the 100%. Actuality. You're like, 6'8" wing, can shoot a little bit. Yeah. So then you watch him, and you're like, kind of looks like Mo Harkless out there.
Long career, Mo Harkless.
But yeah, I will say this, and this I want to tee up a voicemail we got like this morning, which I think is a fun discussion item for us. Trading him made me gain a lot of trust back in the organization, because my big thing the last like year and a half with this 2 timeline plan is like, at times it did feel like they were more interested in James Wiseman than winning with Steph Curry. Right. And like, almost like, all right, you guys want a title. Let's see if I can gut this more for more kids, like that sort of thing. Yeah. And like in trading him, it's just a silent admission. Didn't work. We're going to bring a veteran in, maybe it's not the perfect way to do it that we wanted, but at least it's a nod to say like, no, we're not maniacs. We're not like watching what's going on in the court and being like, the answer here is to trade Clay for another 19-year-old,
Yeah. So, yeah, it's that's a virtue to be able to know when something isn't working anymore. It's really hard in an organization because there's a lot of capital behind that, and big time decision makers bet on it, and they sold the ownership on it. It's hard for them to reverse course on those. And so I agree with you. And it was a little weird with the whole injury situation, but it's fun to see GP2 back. It just feels right.
So let me play this voicemail we got.
Hey, Sam and Andy, this is Dan from Tiburon. Clearly you didn't like my loony calls with all the names and such, so I'll cut the horse shit and just give you my take. So ideally we win the championship this season, but if we don't, I think the silver lining is Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, what a beast that kid is. Also, we got to figure out the payroll situation. Hopefully Draymond stays, and hopefully Clay extends at a discount. But I have faith in Joe. He's a sports owner who wants to win, and that's really what changed everything. And obviously Steph changed everything too. So, okay, that's my take. I'm out. Take care.
I wanted to share that take because I feel like the most common sentiment I get with Warrior fans and people around the Bay Area, like actual people, not people on Twitter, is Joe Lacob's the
Hearing
best
about
owner.
Wiggins' family. Oh, sorry.
Joe Lacob's the best owner since Eddie DeBartolo. They'll figure it out. They want to win, even, when, at some point Steph's going to retire because that's life. But I trust this ownership group. And I think that's interesting in general. Like, you've spent time around the organization, particularly during the rise of the organization. I'll tee you up a little bit, Ethan, here. How much do you actually buy something like that as a sentiment? Like, can you bet the Warriors in the long game, like beyond the Steph Curry era?
I just think if this is the case, this is a market inefficiency. If there's ownership love, which we know is D Class A, cheering on the billionaire, you can't do that on Twitter. But if people are feeling it, you guys should sell a shirt that has Joe Lacob looking psychotic and pounding his chest, and it reads, "Joe makes this go." And that's the shirt you should sell to the masses.
Most normal people love Joe Lacob. It's 1+1. Yeah, it's 1+1.
As they should.
Bought the team. Team is great. It's very simple. Is
he Gavin Belson from Silicon Valley? Yes. But was he essential in making the organization great? And if you remember what it was like under Chris Cohan, you have a lot of gratitude if you're a fan. Yes. Both of those are true. And what I love about him is how unremorsefully unlovable he is. That's my favorite part about him.
Yeah, like I totally get how he rubs people the wrong way.
Yeah, I like that. I like that he doesn't want to even try to be loved in this fake kind of way. I always look at Mark Benioff, who is the big power in San Francisco. I know Andy can't say anything. It's okay, Andy. I'm just saying that there are billionaires who really want you to love them, and maybe they do some good things along the way. But sometimes it's enjoyable to have somebody who goes, all I want to do is win, and I don't care about anything else, and that's what I'm here for. And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the aftermath of Steph. It might be a comeuppance for old Joe, who might have thought he could do more because he had this incredible wonder strike of having had Steph there. But I think that's a reasonable take to go, look, here's the thing. It's not that you just trust in Joe and they'll be great forever because of Joe Lacob, but they have the essential component of a guy at the top who gives a shit and really cares. And it should be taken for granted that you have that. But in some cases, that's not there. And if that's not there, and there's nobody
talking about
involved,
my Oakland A's.
I'm talking about your Oakland A's. I'm talking about the Chris Cohan Warriors, because here's what happens in that situation. It's a power vacuum. And when there's a power vacuum, everybody's just knifing each other. There's no order. That's what happened under Cohan. It was Game of Thrones beneath him. So to just have a guy who cares at the top and is invested, I think is a tremendous asset to an organization, if not a prerequisite for sustained excellence, if it is going to happen. So I don't necessarily trust that, because there's a lot of luck involved. I don't trust that it means after Steph, the Warriors will be great, but they at least have a component that's absolutely necessary if they are to be.
Yeah.
Look at us. Lacob believers. The show.
The show. Joe makes this go.
I'm shooting it straight. I just needed them to metaphorically touch grass and admit Wiseman wasn't working. Yeah. And I'm back in. Yeah.
Well, Joe, it had to go through him. It's not like Bob was like, let's sneak this through the back door and trade Wiseman, and Lacob won't notice. Like, they had to go to Joe and say, hey, look, man, this kid sucks. We need him out of here. And we're not just gonna trade him. We're gonna trade him for a guy that is hurt and won't play for 6 weeks, but screw it. Because we don't want him in the office. We can't stand him.
I know you sold all the minority owners that we just drafted Giannis 2.0, and we're gonna win for 25 straight years, and it's the money's gonna keep rolling in light years ahead, but it's what has to be done. I get it.
He's a salesman.
You just gotta speak his language.
Yeah.
You gotta speak his language. Yeah, I can see Joe Lake like Bob came to me and he showed me with some OpenAI technology.
Oh boy.
We asked the question, should James Wiseman be on the team? It's really hard. It's really hard to think that maybe he shouldn't, but that's what it said. And so I bought into it.
And you deep down, I would love to know what they privately thought of that situation at the end of the day before they let it go. Because like the public facing is exactly that. It's like, well, I gotta trust my basketball people. This could backfire for us. Joe's not making that move if he thinks it backfires for him. Like, are you kidding me?
No, it's very Logan Roy. Yes, you can fire my girlfriend, but I can't be involved. I was never here. My fingerprints aren't on it.
Oh, I think we should end it there. Ethan, appreciate you coming on. Tee up some House of Strauss. Tell the people what they can expect if they don't subscribe. I know a chunk of Light Years listeners subscribe, but let's assume not everyone does. What can they expect over there?
I didn't have an elevator pitch before, but now I do. And I will name drop. It was given to me by one Daryl Morey when I went to Sloan. He said, asking the questions about sports that others are too afraid to ask. Grandiose? Yes. True? Maybe you be the judge. Maybe you subscribe and find out. I do podcasts. I do articles. I do reporting. I do opinion. And it has been successful. And I think it's been successful in part because, as we're noting earlier in this conversation, there's just a lot of stuff where people aren't going to get real about increasingly in media. Too much fear of going over the middle. House of Strauss, we go over the middle all the time. There you go.
Perfect. And that is a good elevator pitch. By the way, shout out Daryl Morey for giving you that one, because going over the middle, I like that. That is a perfect analogy for what we're talking about here. Really paints the picture.
Well, it's like turning injuries off when you're your own boss and there's no Slack channel. And now the metaphor is getting mixed and I'm screwing up the dismount. But I appreciate you having me on, Sam. Appreciate you having me on, Andy. Anytime, as you guys know.